Hello, everyone. Welcome to Gift of Health Weekly Wellness Live. Uh, for those of you who are joining us, I'm Dr. Arjun Rayapudi, and this is my lovely wife, Dr. Shobha Rayapudi. We're both co-founders of Gift of Health and lifestyle medicine doctors. At Gift of Health, we are showing people how to break free from disease and medications and lose weight, have more energy, and have more fun in life. And every week we are bringing new wisdom and new knowledge about lifestyle diseases and how to use food and lifestyle as medicine. And today,
Yeah, and this week we are really excited to have a special guest, and which you might not even hear a lot, like when it comes to building muscles on a plant-based diet. Like this is something that you would be hearing very rarely, or even finding not many people out there. So that's why today we are really excited to have a very special guest. And we are so happy to have Forest Nash here. So he is a vegan personal trainer, and I know like now you will get to see him and hear from him like all the amazing things that he does, and we are so glad. So he's joining us from Australia, and it's early morning, 8 o'clock there. So thank you so much for joining us, Forrest.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's great to be here.
oh, we're so excited to have you on the Gift of Health Wellness Chat, Forrest. Uh, it's just amazing. Like your accomplishments are amazing. You've been a champion of the national men's physique competitions before, and you've been training hundreds of people all across the world. And in fact, I feel honored that I've been training with you for the last 4 months. Yeah, and it's been a tremendous journey so far. So we are so excited to have you and share your success and your journey and break away some of the myths around building muscle.
Absolutely. Well, I'm happy to do that. I think, there's some of those stereotypes still exist around, that you can't build muscle on a plant-based diet, or, vegans are these kind of scrawny, pale weaklings who can just barely muster up the energy to get out of bed in the morning. And those myths are starting to fade away. And I really kind of make it my mission in life to help break down some of those stereotypes and just be a positive role model for people and show that you can really be strong and fit and healthy and achieve any kind of athletic goal that you have, and in fact excel in sport on a plant-based diet. And so I find it really rewarding to do that, and great to connect with other like-minded individuals like yourselves.
Amazing.
So we are just curious, Forrest, so what actually inspired you to get started?
So getting started with fitness, or
what inspired you to become a bodybuilder, and especially like this the area or niche you're in, like you are showing people how this is possible doing on a plant-based lifestyle. So what actually inspired you to be on this journey to this pro bodybuilder with this plant-based unique lifestyle?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So my, I guess, background upbringing is a little bit maybe different from most people. I was actually raised as a vegetarian from birth. So never eaten meat, which I think is pretty cool. My parents were ethical vegetarians, so that was part of their spiritual path that they followed. And so I just had that upbringing basically, from day one in life. And as I kind of grew up and got older, I developed a passion for health and fitness. I started learning more about nutrition, and I started learning more about the health benefits of plant-based diets and whole food plant-based nutrition in particular. And I also was finding around that time, which was maybe probably 7 or 8 years ago now, I was paying more attention to what I was eating and kind of how I would feel as a result. And I found that the few animal products that I did have in my diet, which were mainly dairy, that was it. We didn't have any eggs or anything like that even. But when I did have dairy products, like whey protein shakes or cheese or whatever it may be, I didn't feel very good. Sometimes I would find, I'd get congested, or I would, feel bloated, or I'd break out, acne, things of that nature. And so I was looking into it, and I'm also the kind of person where if I'm going to do something, I like to kind of do it 100%. And so I could see that there were people out there who were actually doing the things that I was interested in, like fitness and bodybuilding and, physique training and those sorts of things on a vegan diet. And I'll give a shout out here to one of my great mentors along this journey, which is Derek Treesize of Vegan Muscle and Fitness. And I believe you've been in touch with him as well, Arjun. And he's a vegan bodybuilder and one of the original kind of vegan fitness people out there who's been doing it for, over a decade at this point. And I could see online he was posting his, training and diet, and he had some other folks on there that he was working with, and they were getting great results and just really absolutely, crushing it on a plant-based diet. And so I thought, if these folks can do it, I'm going to give it a shot. And so I made that switch to a fully plant-based vegan diet back in 2015. So a little over 7 years ago now. And yeah, I look at it as definitely the best decision I've ever made in my life. I wish I had done it sooner, of course, but yeah, certainly no going back now. And yeah, since then I've just continued to be able to achieve the goals that I had. I was already really into fitness at that point. I've been training for a while, but I've continued to do that, and I find that my performance for my training, my energy, recovery tends to be better on a plant-based diet, and I just feel better physically in my body. And it certainly hasn't been any impediment to my success. I have, since going vegan, competed twice in men's physique natural bodybuilding competitions, going up against omnivores and mediators and people who are eating tons of animal products. And I was fortunate enough to win my class both times. And so it certainly wasn't holding me back in terms of that arena of athletic competition either. And now I do make it my area of specialty, basically, to work with other people around the world, as you said, who are interested in pursuing their health and fitness goals on a plant-based diet, and whole food plant-based in particular is kind of my specialty there. And so, yeah, I just feel really fortunate and find it really rewarding to be able to do that.
And we are so glad you decided to choose this arena, because it's so difficult to find physical trainers, especially who would say that you can still do this without meat. Even though I know, like, in this day and age, even though like we have known for so long that you can definitely build muscle on plant-based diet, it's so tough to find people who can actually train you on plant-based diet.
Yeah, for sure. There are more and more kind of starting to appear online nowadays, which is fantastic to see, but certainly it's, a small fraction of the total kind of fitness community out there, but I like to think that we're slowly kind of taking over.
Yes. And I know for our viewers, we actually wanted to show your pictures, because I know like people might be wondering.
Yeah, sometimes when you're talking about the bodybuilding, right? Like, we wanted to share like some of your the pictures that to give you a glimpse of to the viewers what is possible, without
eating
any animals. Yeah. So
absolutely.
let's. I'm just gonna share our screen. Let's see. So we have while this is loading up, like we have people from all over the world. Like here we have people from US, Canada, like Flo is saying hi, Maureen is saying hi, Sadie, hi, Sadie. So just share with us like where you're joining from, and let your friends and family members know. Give a like or a thumbs up, and that's how this gets onto the other people's newsfeed as well. That's great. Let's see, we have this loaded up. There we go. Yes, okay, good. I'm going to share our screen. So this is what is possible. This is what Forest has been able to accomplish on a plant-based diet. Can you build them? This is a question that keeps coming up, right? Can you build muscle on a plant-based diet? This is all pure plant-based muscle, Forest.
That's right.
Yeah. And this is some of your partners.
Yeah, so that's a great photo. That was actually from back in 2017 when I did my first bodybuilding competition.
Uh-huh.
And that was with Team Plant Built, which is actually a team of vegan athletes that competes in various sports, so bodybuilding, but also things like powerlifting, CrossFit, and kettlebell sport, and different sports like that, basically strength sport. And so it's really cool to be able to get together a big group of people who are all, pretty competitive athletes, but are all eating a plant-based diet and actually going up against, again, omnivorous competitors, folks who are eating lots of meat and animal products. And we did really well at that particular event. It was a huge competition, but our little group of, I think it was like maybe 40 plus vegan athletes. And we came away with, I think, over 30 medals and trophies, including 20 plus first place finishes, one of which I was proud to bring home myself. So that was a really cool event, really got a lot of positive attention in the media. And again, just helping to kind of break down some of those stereotypes out there.
Wow.
That's excellent. And here you're mentioning about one of your a friend and mentor, Derek.
Yep.
Right?
So that's him. I'm kind of in the middle on the left there, and that's him on the right next to me there. So that's Derek, who is a great mentor to me along this journey, and surely to lots of other people. He's helped inspire countless folks to probably go plant-based and pursue their fitness goals. And yeah, as you can see, he's got a pretty decent physique there as well.
Yes, absolutely. Excellent. So yeah, some more views here to share. Like, yeah, this is something that it's amazing what you've been able to accomplish. Like, it's quite inspiring as well. Yeah, this is nice overview of the back. What is possible for your back? All plant-based.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we thought that will give a perspective to the viewers, like what is possible, right? With that, we setting the stage, like we are like taking some questions, like live questions. If you have any questions about fitness or building muscle on a plant-based diet, feel free to share in the comments while we're getting new questions. There are questions that have already come in. One is from a mother of a teenager, and her son is very active with hockey, fitness, and is into building muscle. He works out at the gym, but he is under the impression that he need to eat meat for protein, and he needs to take like a lot of protein shakes every day. And she's concerned about all these protein shakes and supplements he's taking to build some muscle. And this is like a 16-year-old. So what do you have any thoughts on that? Like what your perspective?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess there's kind of two different points there. One is, do you need, to eat meat in order to get necessary protein to build muscle? Spoiler alert, the answer is no, of course. And then the second part is, kind of more the sports supplement side, like protein powder and lots of other supplements that are out there. So we can probably look at those one at a time. But yeah, as far as building muscle is concerned, protein is important, and having an optimal or kind of an adequate protein intake in your diet definitely does help, and it does make a difference. It isn't necessarily the most important factor, nutritionally speaking, though, when it comes to building muscle. Probably the most important factor is actually just going to be your total calorie intake, basically just making sure that you're eating enough food, providing enough energy to your body for it to be able to then synthesize new tissue and actually go about building muscle. And so typically what I recommend to people who are interested in gaining muscle is to make sure they're eating at a caloric surplus, which means you would be eating a little bit more at the end of the day and the end of the week than what you're burning through your physical activities. And so with that little bit of energy that's left over, then your body is actually able to put that towards building muscle. And that's going to be probably the most powerful driver of muscle growth right there. And you can absolutely build some muscle without being in a calorie surplus, but it will just it'll be a lot slower. You'll see, more gradual progress if you do it that way. And so just by having those extra calories coming in, you can basically provide a really powerful kind of anabolic stimulus to your body, which is to say, stimulating it to synthesize new tissue, which is, of course, the goal in this case. That being said, once you do have adequate calories taken care of, protein is maybe of secondary importance there in terms of kind of the nutrition side of things for building muscle. Training also very important, of course, but it sounds like this, her son is doing a lot of training currently. There's a range of protein intakes that will probably work quite well for building muscle. And this has been established pretty clearly now. There's a good deal of scientific literature on this topic. So the range is usually anywhere from, on the high end, up to like 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And that's for relatively lean individuals. So if you're, someone who's overweight, you have a lot of excess body fat, you definitely don't need to be like, if you're a 300-pound person, you don't need 300 grams of protein for sure. But someone who's active like this, a teenager, probably not carrying a ton of body fat. And so then that would be the high end of the range there. And that is if you want to get a check mark that says for sure eating more protein is not going to help. Like you've got as much as could possibly be beneficial and probably a little bit more than you need. That's the 1 gram per pound. Now, the good news is you can absolutely eat significantly less than that and still get really great results as far as building muscle. So what I typically recommend to clients is on the lower end of that range, maybe something like, 0.7 grams per pound of body weight of protein per day. And so that might be, if you were, let's say 150-pound individual, a little over 100 grams per day versus like that 150 grams if you were going for a gram per pound. So there is a pretty broad range there. But yeah, if you're somewhere within that range, you're doing resistance training, and importantly, you have a calorie surplus, then you're probably going to build muscle just fine. And particularly if you're someone who's relatively new to resistance training, it doesn't have to be like completely maxed out on the protein intake, because there's going to be such a novel stimulus to your body from the training that you're doing, and also just from having a calorie surplus there, if you have that will be enough to, cause quite a bit of muscle growth to happen for a long, long time. And then down the road, depending on how far you want to go with it, someone like me who is interested in competing in physique sport, I eat more towards that gram per pound end of the spectrum, but I've also been training for 15 years. And at this point, it's kind of like, if I want to get anything, I have to do everything in order to make that happen. And so it's not for everyone. That's, it again depends on the individual, their situation, and kind of how far down that road they want to go. But yeah, those are typically the protein recommendations as far as building muscle. And it's really important to point out, it's a different recommendation from how much protein you would need just to be healthy and avoid protein deficiency and, kind of minimize risk of chronic disease. That's much less. That's around, 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So that's like, 40% as much as kind of the range that I was just talking about there. And so there is a difference there. Again, it depends on kind of what your priorities are. So if you're not overly concerned with building muscle, you maybe want to build a little bit, but you also just want to have a really healthy diet for the long term, eating a bit less protein is absolutely fine. And it's up to the individual to decide, where on that spectrum they want to kind of position themselves based on what their priorities are. So that was a bit of a tangent about protein intake, but to come back to the original question, as far as, do you need to eat meat to get protein? The source of the protein really does not matter that much. If you have the protein coming in, you have the calories coming in, you can absolutely be getting it from plant-based sources. Things like your legumes, of course, are phenomenal sources. Your beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils, things of that nature are all really good protein sources. Soy products like tofu and tempeh are totally fine. And then, yeah, there are, of course, protein powders and supplements and things like that out there, which, a lot of folks like to use. They can be a convenience item. They're not a requirement by any stretch. And when it comes to thinking about supplements or sports supplements in particular, I think one thing that's helpful to keep in mind is the sort of sport and bodybuilding fitness supplement industry has been around for maybe a few decades, maybe like 30 or 40 years or something like that. And people have been building muscle and getting stronger and excelling at sport for like thousands of years, right? So it's certainly like the time of the ancient Greeks and Romans and, way back then. And so you absolutely don't need any of those supplements in order to build muscle. There are a few of them that can potentially have some benefit, but yeah, certainly not a requirement. And again, as far as protein powder is concerned, it's largely just a matter of convenience, because it's just, you do a workout at the gym, you just down a protein shake. That's an easy way to get some protein. And you could also eat a whole food meal, have a plate of rice and beans or something like that. But that, maybe takes a little bit more effort when you're just like in your car on the way home from the gym. So that's kind of how I look at it as far as the supplements are concerned. But yeah, in terms of, needing meat for protein, the answer is no. All the amino acids that are necessary, the essential amino acids, are present in plant foods. and in the appropriate distribution and ratios. If you're eating a varied whole food plant-based diet, you're going to get all of them, no problem. And then protein powder, it's up to personal discretion. What I will say about sports supplement though, or sports supplements in general, is there are a lot of other ones out there that are for sure not going to do anything, or there's no compelling research that they have much benefits. So things like branched chain amino acids, or lots of people taking different like pre-workout supplements and various things like that. Most of those are a waste of money, in my opinion. There are a few that have some, kind of documented benefits, but for the most part, I would just focus on, particularly for this individual, training hard, because it sounds like they're relatively early in their training career. Make sure they're eating enough calories. Getting protein in at each meal is definitely a good idea for sure, but I wouldn't worry too much about like the nitty gritty details of it just yet. Just focus on doing the basics and enjoying that process.
Thank you so much, Forrest. I mean, that was really like a broad perspective, and like you gave it all. So
like to summarize, Forrest, so what we are saying here is basically, you don't need any like animal protein to build muscle. The second one that many people are trying to figure out is, do you need to supplement like protein intake? And you have said it's a broad range to build muscle. Like you could have anywhere from 0.7 grams per pound to maybe 1 or 1.5 per kilogram, right? High end, you said, is like maybe 1 gram per pound.
Yeah, that's for, again, people like myself who are very serious about building muscle. It's a very high priority, and I've been training for many years. And so again, I'm kind of turning those dials as far as they'll go, naturally speaking, of course. But that's not like a recommendation for anyone else. That's what I do personally. And if someone is really serious about building muscle and it's a high priority, then go for it. But there are some trade-offs there as far as protein intake. Probably having a little bit less protein might be better in terms of like optimal longevity. I'm hoping that with a whole food plant-based diet, most of my protein coming from really nutritious whole foods, that will kind of balance it out a little bit. But again, it's up to everyone to decide where they want to fall on that spectrum.
Absolutely. So having been working with you for like last 4 months, I have experimented in my own journey with different proportions. And what we have come up with, like for me, is like 0.7 grams per per pound of body weight. And that was coming to roughly about 90 grams of protein, 90 to 100 grams of protein per day. And you also mentioned, if you just want to live healthy plant-based eating, you don't need that much protein. We know that even if you get like 50 grams of protein per day, which is more than enough for like a healthy lifestyle, just like by increasing focus on the protein intake from the healthy plant-based sources, you're optimizing your chances to build the muscle along with the along with the training. Right. It's so just some people also have this misconception that just you chug all the protein and then you're going to build all the muscle. Right. It's and I wanted to actually share one of my day that I've worked with you, like where we tracked chronometer intake, like on track the nutrient intake on a chronometer, where it was so easy to get like the protein. So I'm just going to share a screen for the viewers. Like this is a free app that is available for anyone who's more curious, one like chronometer.com. So here you could, I put in the stuff that I ate in that day, and I had, few good amount of lentils that day, hemp seeds. I'm just going to increase the size of the text. So I had some chickpeas and quinoa, flax seeds, chia seeds, and some soy milk. And at the end of the day, I had 116 grams of protein. Yeah. And that was like, we talked about it, and you suggested that anywhere from like 75 to 90 grams would be more than enough. But I just that day I wanted to just check and see, like, okay, without trying too much, by increasing the intake of legumes, beans and lentils and seeds, is it possible? And that was without any protein supplements.
Exactly. Yeah. And for sure, if you're hitting that, 116 grams on that day, you would probably be getting at least that 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. And so putting you solidly within the range there to give you a really good shot at building muscle. And yeah, as you said, it wasn't that difficult, just increase the portions of some of those beans and high protein foods a little bit. And you didn't need to rely on, protein supplements or any highly processed foods to get that in. So yeah, certainly doable. It takes a little bit of planning sometimes, and using an app like Chronometer or MyFitnessPal is another really popular one. Using an app like that can be really helpful because it allows people to just record their diet, get a sense of what things look like, and then make adjustments if they need to in order to make sure that their training and eating are working together to get them the results that they want.
Absolutely.
So we have some questions from viewers. So Robert is asking, do you take any supplements?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier. I think there are two different categories of supplements that it's worth talking about, particularly for individuals who are eating a plant-based diet. So of course, if you are on a fully plant-based diet, it's a really good idea to supplement vitamin B12. You want to make sure you have a reliable source of that coming in. So I do that. I also take a vitamin D supplement on days where I'm not getting a lot of sun exposure. So make sure I've got vitamin D and B12 covered. The rest of the basically vitamins and minerals and those sorts of nutrients can be obtained pretty easily if you're just eating a varied whole food plant-based diet, which is what I do. I do also take an omega-3 supplement, which is derived from algae oil. And so that's just an extra one to kind of cover that base there. Particularly at the moment, I'm doing a fat loss dieting phase. And so my fat intake is pretty low. And so I want to make sure I do have those essential omega-3 fatty acids coming in. So that's another one that I supplement. It's not required if you're on a plant-based diet, but there might be some benefit there. And so I go ahead and do that. And those are the only ones that really, the vitamin B12 is the main one. If you're out in the sun a lot and you're eating lots of, like flax seeds and things like that, you probably don't need the other two. But those are the kind of just general health and wellness supplements that I take. And then as far as kind of sports performance supplements, of course, the big one we talked about earlier is protein powder. I do sometimes use that just as a convenience item. So after a workout, maybe having a protein shake or a smoothie or something like that. And that can just be a convenient way because sometimes I'm at the gym, maybe working with clients, or if I'm on the way home or something like that, I don't have time to eat a full meal, but I do want to still get that protein in after the workout because that can help boost recovery from your training and boost muscle protein synthesis, which is basically, how muscle gets created in the body. So I do use protein powder for that reason, not excessively. It's a very small part of my diet, but again, it's just a convenience item. And I could get that protein from Whole Foods, but yeah, it would just, it would take a lot of eating to do that sometimes. And then the other sport performance supplement that I do use, because it has a very extensive amount of research and kind of evidence to support it at this point, is creatine monohydrate. And creatine is actually a naturally occurring compound in the human body. And basically what it does is it sort of hangs out in your muscle tissue, and it acts as sort of one of the compounds that is involved in the production of energy inside skeletal muscle. And so it can actually boost your performance a little bit. If you're supplementing creatine, you might be able to train slightly harder in the gym. It's not a huge difference, but it makes a difference of, maybe doing 11 reps in a set instead of 10 or something like that. And it has been very extensively studied and shown to be safe and effective for that purpose. It also causes a little bit of water retention, basically a little bit of extra water is drawn into the muscle tissue. And so that can kind of fill out your muscles a little bit and give them a kind of a rounder, fuller look, which is cool. But it's a very small kind of bonus that you get from creatine. But one thing that's worth keeping in mind is folks who are eating a plant-based diet will tend to have maybe lower levels of creatine than people who are eating meat. And the reason for that is creatine is found in muscle tissue, and that's true of animal muscle as well. And of course, if you're eating meat, that's what you're eating, which is kind of gross if you think about it, but that's what it is. And so you might be getting some dietary creatine that way if you're eating meat. Of course, on a plant-based diet, that's not there. And it's not an issue. You're not going to become creatine deficient if you're on a plant-based diet. But if you want to supplement to get a little bit extra in there, that can potentially give you a slight edge to your training. And so I use it for that reason. It's a very small amount of creatine. It's like 5 grams a day, that sort of thing.
Excellent. Yeah. So I like the way you covered, like, from the health perspective, on a plant-based diet, it is like, when we're teaching our lifestyle medicine programs, we suggest, like, people who are going on a whole food plant-based diet, B12 is something that we highly recommend you supplement. That is evidence-based. And
Yep.
Vitamin D is yes or no, depending upon like your levels. And omega-3s, especially like if you're taking a spoon of flax seeds or chia seeds per day, your needs are covered. And the other things that, like, especially from the performance standpoint, you mentioned protein supplement, and you're doing it out of convenience, but it's not a must. And when you do that, like, is there any particular, like, plant-based protein powders you go with?
Yeah, I typically just try to find ones that have, relatively high quality ingredients. So the one I use at the moment, I think it has all organic proteins in there. It's sourced from 4 different plant proteins. So it's got a really complete amino acid profile, and it doesn't have a lot of added junk in there, like artificial flavors or sweeteners or things like that. And I also try to look at where the products are sourced from and try to get ones that are grown, like, for example, in Australia where I live, or in New Zealand or the US, so that hopefully the quality of the actual protein that's going in there will be a little bit higher and lower risk of cross contamination or heavy metal contamination, things like that. Sometimes you have to watch out for with certain supplements. So that's what I look for. And yeah, there's not like a particular magic one out there that's going to give you better results. Probably most of them will do about the same thing. And so the one I use is just, it kind of ticks those boxes. It tastes okay, it's relatively inexpensive, and so it works for me.
Excellent. And creatine, again, you mentioned about creatine. That's also optional. It's not a must. Anyone should be looking for.
Excellent. Yeah, there's no such thing. Like, if you had no protein at all in your diet, then yeah, you would have a problem. Protein deficiency. It happens almost to no one nowadays, which is fortunate. But yeah, from as far as I'm aware, there's no such thing as creatine deficiency. That's not something that you have to supplement. It is just purely like an added bonus for people like myself who are very interested in optimizing their training and nutrition.
Excellent. Yeah. I think Connie is actually saying hi from Jamaica. Good. Yeah. And we have an interesting question from Dr. Shah. He's a cardiologist, one of our heroes. That he has done amazing work in the field of lifestyle medicine, bringing this plant-based nutrition, lifestyle medicine to thousands of people. He's asking, how much training per day do you do? And how many grams of protein do you take per day?
Yeah, for sure. So as far as the training, I typically train 6 days per week. If I'm in, one of my main training phases with either the goal of building muscle or, losing body fat while maintaining muscle, I'll be hitting the gym 6 days per week. And that's doing resistance training. So, lifting weights with barbells, dumbbells, machines, things of that nature. And typically those workouts will be anywhere from, maybe an hour or even a little bit less than an hour at the beginning of my training cycle when things are a little bit easier. And then towards the end, I'll typically build up volume and intensity over the span of maybe 5 weeks. And so at the end of that, workouts might be close to 2 hours on some days. Usually on average, it may be, an hour and a half or somewhere in the middle there. And so that's how much time I personally devote to it. Again, it's not a recommendation for anyone else. That's based on my particular situation and goals and, how much of a priority it is for me, which is quite high. But for most folks, particularly if you're just starting out, I wouldn't recommend doing that much. Probably starting with like 3 days per week, maybe doing a full body workout each time, something like that. And those workouts can be an hour or less in length. That can give you a really good start and allow you to build muscle quite well for quite a while. And then down the road, if you decide that you're, really enjoying it and you want to do more, maybe then you could go, 4 days a week. But typically, yeah, start gradually and build that up over time.
Absolutely. Like, I think this is something that we explored. I explored this question many times with you during my training with you, right? Like, I like the way you helped me to build gradually, getting consistent, and that's what I've stuck to for like last 4 months is the whole body workout, 3 to 3.5 days. Like 3 to 3.5 times per week, like alternate day. And exactly. I've asked you multiple times, okay, is there a benefit of doing 5 times a week, 6 times a week? And I mean, you have mentioned many times, just if you're starting out 3 times a week, 4 times a week is more than enough. And only when you get serious about it, if you want to go pro level, then yes, you could go, 6 times a week or not.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's really important, and you kind of touched on it there as well, is the consistency factor is key. And that's more important than how many days per week you're training, is just to be able to do it consistently. And so a lot of people are really gung-ho starting out and they're like, yeah, I'm going to train 6 days a week or 7 days a week or, something crazy like that. But the problem is that's not very sustainable for most people. And so you end up maybe doing that for a few weeks and then kind of dropping off. And so it's much better with the long-term results in mind to start with a lower number, maybe 3 or 4 sessions per week, even 2 sessions per week if you're starting from scratch could be fine. Making that something that's really manageable that you can stick with for the long term and put in that consistency over days and weeks and months, because that's where the real results are really going to come from.
Excellent. So we have another question from Sean, which you have kind of answered. So his question is, how many hours a week do you dedicate to your fitness, which you just answered? And what's your favorite go-to meal to get ready for a workout and afterwards?
Yeah, that's another good one. So usually before the workout, it depends what time of day you're training. For myself personally, I like to train in the afternoon, so I have a chance to get up and have a couple of meals in already. So I've got some good fuel in the tank basically for my workout, and I'll have good energy for my training. And so what I'll typically do is before the workout, I want to have a meal that's high in carbohydrate, because that's going to provide really good kind of clean burning energy for that workout, make sure that my performance is good. And also that has a good amount of protein in there, just because, you know, if you're trying to get a high protein intake like I am, you want to make sure you have protein in every meal. And so typically that will be something before workout, might be like a big bowl of rice and beans with some veggies, you know, maybe corn or salsa and things like that in there. And it might be around 600 or 700 calories and, you know, maybe 30 plus grams of protein and probably over 100 grams of carbohydrate in that particular meal, because that is going to be really the kind of the bulk of the fuel then for that workout that I'm doing. And I'll have that and then maybe go to the gym a couple hours later so that I've had time to kind of digest and absorb and get some of those nutrients into the bloodstream. I'm not trying to work out, you know, after having just eaten, because then you feel sick, but also you don't want to be going to the gym feeling hungry, because that's no fun, and you probably, you know, energy won't be very good. And so that's what I'll typically have before the workout. And then after the workout, it's not necessarily a full meal that I would have, but it's more of just a snack at that time, and that's to help boost recovery. And so again, the goal there is to get in protein and carbohydrates in a way that's going to be kind of quick to digest and absorb. And so typically I'll just have, you know, a protein shake or smoothie at that time. If I'm having a smoothie, I'll put in some fruit like bananas or something like that, so I get some good carbs that way. Or at the moment, I'm doing a fat loss diet, and so I want to actually eat my fruit instead of blending it up, because it'll be more satiating that way. And so I'll typically just eat several pieces of fruit like apples or oranges or, you know, pears, things of that nature, which is quite filling, which is good, but also provides some good carbohydrates to help recover and restore the muscle glycogen, which is basically a stored carbohydrate in your muscle cells that gets used up when you're training. And so having those carbs coming in right after the workout is a good way to help jumpstart that recovery.
Amazing.
Excellent. Yeah. So I'm glad that you brought it up, like that, you know, it's not a good idea to go for the workout on a full stomach. Like some people, like you mentioned that you have that big meal, good meal, maybe a couple of hours before you have workout, because knowing you, like your routine is you typically likes to work out in the midday or in the afternoon session.
Yep.
But for folks who are working out like in the morning, you don't necessarily have to have a pre-meal workout, isn't it? Like especially if you feel like you're well energized, like you're doing in the morning, you may not need anything pre-workout, but you may need something like a meal, like a wholesome meal post-workout.
Yeah, again, I think it depends on the individual, and it also depends on what your situation and goals are. So if your goal is fat loss, there could actually be some benefit to doing the workout in a fasted state, where you then maybe burn a little bit more fat as a fuel source while you're exercising. It's not going to make a huge difference, but maybe a slight bonus there. But if you have the goal of building muscle, probably it's a decent idea to at least have something before the workout, you know, even if it's just like half a banana, or, you know, you make a smoothie and you drink part of it before the workout. That's something I've done in the past when I was training in the morning. And that will, again, just give you a little bit of fuel in the tank and maybe a little bit of energy to have a slightly more productive training session. But again, it depends on the individual. Some folks might feel fine waking up and they just go and work out on an empty stomach. And if so, that's great. But what I would say for those people is then afterwards, you definitely want to make sure you get a good meal in as soon as you finish the workout, and make sure you have some good protein and carbs in that meal.
Excellent. So another question here.
Yeah. So Mark is asking, is there a particular format that you use for eating for gaining muscle? For example, timing of meals before or after your workouts, which you kind of answered.
Hmm. Yeah. So as far as meal timing is concerned, it's not a jugularly important kind of piece of the puzzle. The main things are just, getting enough calories in, getting enough of your macronutrients in, so your carbs, fats, and protein, and that's going to get you probably 80% of the way there. And then some of those other details like meal timing can definitely make a difference. And so again, for someone like myself, it's worth paying attention to. And so I do. What I'll typically do there is I would say having probably 3 to 4 meals at least throughout the day is a good idea. You can have more than that, like 5 or 6 meals. Some people like to just eat smaller meals more frequently, and that's totally fine. But if you're having less than 3 meals, you're probably leaving some cards on the table as far as building muscle is concerned, just because it has been shown in sort of the scientific literature that having your daily protein intake, even if it's the same amount of protein, having it spaced out through several different feedings across the day is probably going to be a little bit more beneficial for building muscle versus if you just had 1 or 2 huge meals with tons of protein in there. Some of that protein might not be able to get used for building muscle, then it might just get burnt off for fuel or that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I would say have at least 3 to 4 meals a day is a really good idea. For myself personally, I probably have 4 main meals, and then I'll have that kind of post-workout snack that I mentioned as well. And so I usually wake up feeling pretty hungry in the morning, so I'll have breakfast, within the first hour of being awake. And then after that, I just space out my meals, maybe every 3 hours or so, I'll be having another meal. Try to time it so that the meal before training is about hour and a half to 2 hours before I hit the gym, and then I'll have that post-workout meal straight after, and then my next meal probably a couple hours after that. And then as far as kind of when to stop eating in the evening, there might be some benefit as far as kind of like the chronobiology side of things, kind of syncing up your diet with your circadian rhythm. There might be some benefit to not eating a lot right before you go to bed, maybe have better sleep quality. But on the other hand, there's a trade-off there where you don't want to be going to bed feeling hungry. And for myself personally, I have a pretty fast metabolism. I get hungry pretty quickly. And so I have to eat within a couple hours of going to bed so that I feel satiated and can actually get a good night's sleep. And so that, again, comes down to probably personal preference. But yeah, I recommend having at least 3 to 4 meals if you're interested in building muscle, have protein in each one of those, and have them spaced out relatively evenly across the day.
Excellent. So Forrest, I do want to bring up something for many of our listeners, like they are at a different level of fitness and different level of life cycle compared to you. You are, you're a fit pro bodybuilder.
I'm just sorry on that. I'm an amateur bodybuilder, so I haven't won a pro card in bodybuilding. That would be fantastic if I had. But yeah, I am a bodybuilder and someone who takes it very seriously.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. So for some people like who have chronic disease and like who are trying to lose excess weight at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. Like we who are trying to change their diet at the same time, be trying to be more fit. Our mm-hmm. suggestion has been to focus on fat loss, mm-hmm. and keep the fitness on in the beginning, and later, because no matter how much you work out, if you have a lot of fat on the body, it will be hard to show that muscle structure, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So for someone in that situation, maybe it's an individual who is somewhat overweight or they've got a fair amount of body fat to lose. Definitely focusing on fat loss as the first priority is a really good idea. But that's not to say that you can't also be doing some physical activity, doing some resistance training during that time. And the good news is there, particularly for people who are new to training, new to weight bearing exercise, and maybe also new to sort of the more scientific way of dieting, they can actually get pretty decent results in the beginning doing a little bit of both. So if you're quite overweight and you've never lifted a weight before, and you start doing that, and you start paying more attention to what you're eating whole food, plant-based, eating a little bit more protein, you can definitely lose weight and probably gain a little bit of muscle mass at the same time, which is fantastic. That's kind of the best of both worlds. And that's not something that I recommend to most people, because for most folks, it's going to be more efficient to focus on one goal or the other. And in this case, you would still be focusing on fat loss as the main goal, but by doing that resistance training and making sure you do have some protein coming in, you probably can get some good muscle growth at the same time. And so then when you get down to maybe your goal weight, or you've lost the amount of body weight and body fat that you want to, you'll have a head start there as far as building muscle is concerned. And doing resistance training is also really important when you're losing weight and losing body fat, because that's going to prevent you from losing the muscle mass that you already have, because you're using your muscles in a challenging way on a regular basis. It's sending that stimulus to your body that, hey, we need these muscles. We don't want to break these down for fuel because we're in a calorie deficit. And so then what happens is the muscle gets preserved and body fat gets broken down instead, which of course is what we want.
Excellent. So Paula is asking, do you have to be mindful of supplements that are NSF compliant? I read about Dryden McKay, goalie with Minnesota College, just signed by Toronto, who has to serve a suspension because of a non-NSF supplement that he took.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I'm not 100% sure what that NSF is, but I assume it's like, some sort of like drug testing or something like that. Banned substances and supplements, that sort of thing. So definitely something to be aware of. But if you're using, kind of the basic supplements, like what I talked about earlier, as far as sports supplements, protein powder and creatine are the only ones that I use. And you're using them from reputable brands, it's probably not going to be an issue. If you're taking like some weird, Jack 3D Pro, pre-workout explode, supplement that somebody sold you in the back alley behind the GNC store, then yeah, maybe you run into some issues there. But yeah, if you just stick with the basics, or, obviously, like we talked about, supplements are optional anyway, you shouldn't have to worry about it. But yeah, do a little bit of research, make sure you're buying supplements from a reputable brand if you do, and then you should be fine.
Excellent. Dr. Shah, again, our esteemed colleague and cardiologist, he's asking what rep range is ideal and how many sets?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a really good point. Actually, there's kind of two different parts there to unpack. As far as building muscle is concerned, it's been studied pretty well at this point. We've got a pretty convincing body of evidence to show that there's a quite broad rep range actually that can be very effective for building muscle, assuming that each set within that rep range is taken close to failure. So it's a challenging set. You can be doing anywhere from 5 repetitions in a set at the low end of that rep range, up to 30 repetitions at the high end with, of course, a much lighter weight. And assuming that when you get to that 5 reps or 30 or anywhere in between, that you're within a few reps of failure, that you could maybe only do like 2 or 3 more reps, or, sometimes it's 0 or 1 more that you could do, then those sets are going to be roughly equivalent as far as their hypertrophic stimulus, which is to say the amount of muscle growth that they're going to cause or contribute. And so that's kind of good to know, because it means you don't have to be like killing yourself going super hard and heavy all the time. Certainly there is a place for doing heavy compound basic movements, and that can be a great kind of foundational way to train, but you can also be doing some lighter weights, some more isolation type exercises, and just giving yourself a bit more variety that way, still getting a great training stimulus, but maybe not beating up your joints and connective tissues as much. And you may also find, just through experimenting in your own training with trial and error, that certain exercises feel better with different rep ranges, which is absolutely true. And for certain muscles, it depends on the fiber type that you have, which varies from muscle group to muscle group. If you have more fast twitch muscle fibers, they tend to respond better to heavier weights and lower reps, versus more slow twitch kind of endurance type muscle fibers will respond better to rep ranges, maybe 10 to 20, or even that 20 to 30 range, a little bit lighter weight and higher reps. So very broad range there. And I would encourage people to experiment and, try out different rep ranges, see where they feel like they're getting the most out of their training, getting a good kind of, mind muscle connection, so to speak, getting some pump and disruption and tension in the target muscles as they're training them. And if you get a little bit sore afterwards, that's a good proxy for stimulus as well. You can tell the workout is effective and you did something. You don't want to be cripplingly sore. That kind of comes into the next part of the question that we were talking about, which is, what's the right number of sets to do? And that's, unfortunately, there's not like a broad answer. I can say 7 sets, like that's the right number. It depends, of course, on the individual and what muscle group you're training as well. But typically you want to do enough, again, where you get a little bit of a training stimulus. Some of those stimulus proxies are present, like what I mentioned earlier. You feel like you did something, the workout's a little bit challenging, but not so much that you get cripplingly sore afterwards. If you get a little bit of soreness, that's probably a good sign. If you don't get any at all, you might be fine. You might be building muscle, no problem, but you might be able to benefit from doing a bit more. And so what I would recommend people do is start out with their set numbers on the lower end of the range, like 2 sets per exercise, for example. If you're just starting like the first week of a new program, that might be a fine place to start. That's what I often do with my new clients. And then actually take some notes, see how you feel after the session. Did you get sore? Were you feeling it? Did it seem challenging? Did it seem easy? And if you're getting sore afterwards in a muscle, like for example, you do 2 sets of bench press and your chest is sore the next day, you can be 100% sure that you're getting an effective training stimulus. You don't need to do more. But what you will probably find is, as you repeat that process, maybe next week you do 2 sets again, you get a little bit less sore. And the week after, maybe you don't get sore at all. When you're not getting that soreness anymore, it means your body is adapting to that stimulus. And so then is when it can actually be beneficial to increase your set numbers. And then maybe next week you do a 3rd set of bench, and then you get a little bit more sore again. And so as your body's adapting, you ramp up the volume and also the intensity of the training that you're doing. Make sure you're keeping it challenging, just hard enough to make progress, but also, recoverable, so that you can come back and train effectively again the next session and the next week and so on. And so that's typically what I recommend doing, is start off gradually, set numbers a little bit lower, actually take some notes, I find can be really helpful. And that's what I do with my own workouts as well. And then see if you didn't get sore after workout. Yeah, maybe try doing a little bit more next time. If you did get sore, then you're on the right track. Maybe you can do the same number of sets, but do an extra rep per set or a little bit more weight. And then the next time, maybe you don't get a sore, then you can add, and so on. But I would err on the side of caution. If you're not sure whether you should add sets, then just keep it the same. And eventually you get to the point where you're like, wow, this feels too easy. Then for sure you can add another set and go from there.
I love the way you put it. Like, this is something that we work together quite a bit, is how to train consistently without getting injured. Right. Yes. Because, when we start out, it's so easy to be overzealous and not listen to the body and, injure ourselves. And then you then you have to miss like a longer periods of training. And that is something that, I'm happy that I've worked with you, is just being in tune with the body, so that recognize just that amount where there is the right amount of strain, and then keep it there. And then if it is too much strain, then scale it back, or if it's not enough strain, just push a little bit. That's great.
Exactly.
So Paula is asking, what is the biggest challenge you noticed clients have when trying to switch to a plant-based diet and still build muscle or work out?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So it depends on the individual, I'd say, and what their background is, where they're coming from. One common issue, though, that people run into when they're first adopting a plant-based diet, if they've been eating, more omnivorous or more standard American diet or something like that, is actually just adjusting to kind of the different calorie density of eating plant-based, and particularly a whole food plant-based diet. It usually means you just have to eat more food, because if you're eating lots of, fruits and veggies and whole grains and beans and things like that, of course, that's a super healthy way to eat. But the energy density of those particular foods tends to be a little bit lower. You get fewer calories for the same volume of food. And so it means that you just have to increase your portion sizes a little bit in order to get the same amount of energy that you were getting in before. And that's not a bad thing if you like to eat, which I think, a lot of people do. So that can be, especially for weight loss, that can be helpful, because you still get to eat a lot and feel satiated and actually end up with a calorie deficit. But for someone who doesn't want to lose weight, maybe they're interested in building muscle, then it does mean they have to make a concerted effort to eat a little bit more. And some people, if they don't know that going into it, they just basically cut out animal products, which is, big swaths of their diet that are gone then. And then they just continue eating kind of the same portion sizes as what they always had. And then they will have the issue where they're not getting enough calories and be like, oh man, I tried going vegan and I just felt so weak and I didn't have any energy. And man, the plant-based diet must not be for me. When in fact, what it is just that they simply needed to consume more calories in order to give the body the energy that it needs.
Excellent. That is so so true. Like, many people, when they try to change their lifestyle, sometimes they embark on taking too much. We have observed that changing diet is hard, especially if they're were on an omnivorous journey. Just adopting a plant-based diet itself is a huge undertaking. And you're trying to work out at the same time, start a workout routine along with changing diet. Sometimes it may be, it could be quite a bit too much. Yeah. What we have helped with people is just get the diet under on path, move towards plant-based spectrum, and a month, 2 months, 3 months into it, then gradually also focus on increasing the activity itself. Like, if you're able to do both, that's great. But habit stacking, you start with one habit and then go with the other good habits.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to behavior change, and particularly making some of these lifestyle changes that, of course, you want to be able to maintain for the long term, going gradually is a really good idea, because it is easy. Sometimes you get really fired up about, making some dietary or lifestyle change, and you want to go all in and kind of jump in at the deep end, so to speak. But yeah, sometimes you can run into sustainability issues there, where you end up getting burned out or you don't stick with it. And so, yeah, for most people, I recommend doing that slow and gradual approach for sure. Some people who are super motivated might be able to go kind of the cold turkey approach and be fine. And some people definitely have done that. But I'd say in the majority of cases, taking things a little bit more gradually is good, because it gives you a chance to adjust to these new routines that you're putting in place and kind of, figure things out as you go along without it being too much of a shock to the system.
That's great. First, we have like one last question. Like this is from a viewer, like saying that I'm 75 and I'm quite active,
Awesome.
doing a lot of physical activity in terms of walking. Do I need to start building any muscle? Like, should I? I'm curious, but I don't know where to start. Should I look into building muscle? Do you see any
Yeah,
benefit
for
of
sure.
people building muscle in that age group, 75, 80?
Yeah, so it depends on your goals, of course, and what your background is. It sounds like this person is already active, which is great. But I would say doing some more kind of resistance training or weight bearing type exercise probably would be a really good idea, because it sounds like they were mainly doing more walking type stuff at the moment. And that's great as far as, cardiovascular health is concerned and just keeping up the activity level as we get older. But resistance training in particular has some distinct benefits that you might not get from other forms of exercise, which is that it's going to help maintain muscle mass. If you want to build muscle, you might be able to do that for sure. But even if you're not concerned about that, it's probably still a good idea to maintain the muscle mass that you already have, so that you can remain active and still be able to do the things that you enjoy as you get older. And also weight bearing exercise is really important as far as maintaining bone density as well. So keeping, osteoporosis, things like that at bay. And so for those two reasons, basically maintaining bone mass and muscle mass, resistance training is a really, really good idea as we get older. Even if you don't want to like be a jack bodybuilder or anything like that, that's totally fine. It's not for everyone, but I would still do some, resistance training maybe a few times per week is a good idea. And if you're not sure where to start, probably it would be a good idea in that situation, maybe go to your local gym, see if you can do a session with a personal trainer. Oftentimes they'll have like a free kind of orientation session where they'll just show you around a little bit, show you how to use some of the equipment, maybe start just using some of the machine-based exercises there, because that'll be easier. They're a little bit more supported. You don't have to worry as much about the technique, and you can just try it out, go through those movements a little bit, take it easy in the beginning. Like we talked about, building up gradually is a really good idea, but I would definitely recommend doing something along those lines. And again, meeting with somebody in person can be really helpful, because then they can look at what you're doing and kind of give you some tips on your technique, make sure you're training appropriately and also training safely, so that, like you said, Arjun, you want to minimize the risk of injury.
Absolutely. Those are two important reasons, like you mentioned, especially for people who are in 70s and 80s. It's not just about building muscle, but maintaining that muscle mass, especially as we get older. Like our metabolism slows down, the muscle mass is also like shrinking, and the bone mass is shrinking. But and as you've shared, and there's a lot of evidence for this, where like the consistent resistance training has helped people to slow down that process of osteoporosis, make the bone stronger, prevent these fractures, unnecessary fractures, easy fractures, and also maintain the muscle mass. That's great points.
Yes, and while we were talking, we had just another question trickle in. Do you try to be asleep by a certain time at night, or do you follow a sleep routine?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I think it definitely helps to have an evening routine, or, a few things you maybe do at the end of the day to wind down, something usually relaxing. It's not very stimulative. It's easy nowadays with sort of the hyper connected world that we live in to like be on your phone or watching Netflix or on the computer until right before you go to bed. Unfortunately, for a lot of folks, that's probably not the best as far as the sleep quality that you're going to get afterwards, or you may even have a hard time falling asleep. So what I typically try to do at the end of the day is, for the last maybe hour or half hour before I go to bed, I try to minimize screen time, just to kind of keep away the blue light there that you get if you're using a lot of electronics. That can have kind of a melatonin blunting effect, it seems, and so that can potentially interfere with sleep. What I actually got recently, though, which is interesting, is I purchased a pair of blue light blocking glasses, and so they're kind of these dark orange tinted lenses that I wear just for the last couple hours of the day. And so that way, even if I do need to be on the computer or something like that, it's kind of it makes everything look super orange. It's keeping the blue light out, and so then that can potentially be a little bit better as far as the sleep that you're going to get later on. But outside outside of that, I think, yeah, doing some relaxing activities, maybe doing some meditation or yoga or journaling or things like that, reading a book that's like not super stimulative. Those sorts of activities can be good to do before bed, just to kind of wind down and help get the body ready for sleep. And also you can train yourself, if you do the same thing every day, that you kind of do these certain steps where you're going to do a meditation, you're going to do a journaling, stretching or whatever, and then you go to bed and your body kind of gets used to doing that. And then it might make it easier to fall asleep consistently each time that you do it. And I think it does definitely help having a set routine of when you go to bed and wake up. It depends on the individual. You know, some people are more morning people, some people are more night owls. So that those hours can be whatever you want, but having it, you know, at least 7 to 8 hours between the times when you go to bed and wake up, I think is a really good idea. You don't necessarily have to be asleep for that entire time, but you at least give yourself that kind of sleep opportunity there to get a good amount of time in bed, and try to keep it the same time or similar times day to day, because that again will make it easier. Just train your body to sleep at that time.
Excellent. There is a closing comment from, I would say it would be a nice closing comment from Heather. Heather is sharing, tonight's chat has addressed an issue that just came up for me. I was thinking yesterday that I would like to work towards a stronger and more agile body. I'm in 60s and recovering from a 10-month illness. Thank you for this informative session. So it's, I mean, you have given a good stimulus, like useful motivation and information to get people started. And so we're so happy and honored to have you on the Gift of Health show. First, like for our viewers, what's the best way, you know, if they're more curious about you and want to learn from you and train with you, what would be a good resource that they could connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I've got a few different platforms there where you can contact me. So I have my website, which is forestnash.com.au. It's a .au website because I'm in Australia. If you Google Forest Nash Fitness, it should come right up. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. So Instagram is just @forest.nash, and Forest Nash Fitness on Facebook, or Forest Nash is my personal page. So people are welcome to contact me through any of those avenues. And yeah, certainly always happy to chat. People are interested in learning more about, you know, plant-based nutrition for fitness purposes. I really enjoy helping out with that. And I do also offer free consultations. So if people are ever interested, but they're not quite sure, you know, what might be the best fit for them, happy to jump on a Zoom call or WhatsApp or, you know, whatever it may be, and just have a quick chat with somebody and help kind of answer some questions there if I can.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Like
so we have posted your website here in the comments so that people can reach out to you. Yep. And we have also posted your Facebook link so that, yes, so they can reach out to you.
And I just want to personally say that, like, my experience with Forest has been, like with you, has been just amazing. You helped me stay consistent in terms of resistance training. I'm into multiple modes of fitness, in the sense, like I do yoga, I do a bit of running, other kinds of body weight, calisthenics, and stretching. And I would say I can say that doing resistance training has complemented all these things, and I'm enjoying this combination of like this concept of total fitness, focusing on the changing the body composition, and also focusing on the endurance, strength training, flexibility, balance. The total wellness is something that I'm really working on, and thank you so much for helping me to work towards that goal.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the kind words, and it's certainly my pleasure to help out with that. I've really enjoyed working with you so far and look forward to continuing in the future. But yeah, I want to say thank you also for having me on today. It was great to chat, and thanks to everyone for tuning in and bringing their great questions. Really enjoyed answering those, and yeah, hopefully they got some benefit out of it.
Thank you, everyone. We'll be coming back with the Gift of Health Wellness Chat next week.
Yes.